Hello guys, I'm sorry it's a bit late, but I was never gonna not do the last episode review, so don't worry. After I review this one, I'll be giving my final thoughts on the series as a whole. So even though the other episode ended on a really sad note, this one picks it up quite a bit because we realized that the whole time that Wade was supposedly betraying Knuckles, Knuckles actually had AirPods in, and this was on purpose. Wade and Knuckles apparently knew something like this was gonna happen, or the AirPods were still in from the conversation before. So Knuckles could hear everything that the bad guys were telling Wade, so he knew exactly what was going on. And I think Wade either knew that too, or he was really hoping, and fortunately he was right. Knuckles comes to the trap prepared to kick ass. And kick ass he does pretty easily. He ends up trapping the two agents in their own teleport rings. There's this really gross part with Wanda's thumb, but then Wade and Knuckles go down to finish the bowling tournament and face up to his dumb dad. Turns out Wade's dad and Wade are both pretty competent bowlers, and it's a pretty close call. Even Pistol Pete seems to realize this, which makes him resort to manipulating Wade. He's trying to psych out his own son from winning because, he's just so much better than him and he's a great dad. Anyways, he sucks, gets a little shaky, starts resorting to dirty tactics, and he loses. Wade is the winner. And it is pretty satisfying since we know that Pistol Pete does not deserve to win. The two bowling announcers though, I'm a little torn. I'm not sure if I thought they were very funny. Sometimes they almost were, but they were a little weird, like a little jarring, the things they were saying. Like, I don't know, they weren't too bad. They weren't my favorite either, but they do make one really random comment about this not being the first time an extraterrestrial has shown up at the bowling tournament, because apparently one did in 1974. That one wasn't red. Gee, I wonder if he was red and black. Anyways, I knew that was there for a specific reason, most likely talking about Shadow. 1974, 2024, that's 50 years, so... Or at least I kind of had an idea of it, but I didn't know how specific it was until I watched another YouTuber talk about this and other mentions in the previous Sonic movies. Like, okay, at the end of Sonic 2, you'd have to be stupid to not notice them deliberately talking about a secret project from 50 years ago. It's like, yeah, for sure, this is Project Shadow. And then, of course, we briefly see Shadow, so that one's a big duh. But one thing I didn't notice at all was that Maddie said that there's been a Wachowski protecting Green Hills for the past 50 years. I didn't think anything of that, but apparently this might also be a nod to one of the Wachowskis being there when Shadow was too. So anyways, I just wanted to point that out because I think it's really nice that the Sonic team seems to be keeping track of what they're trying to do. They're sometimes going out of their way to point us to it or being a bit more subtle. Even though we didn't see Shadow or really anything related to Shadow in the Knuckles show, I'm glad they at least made a couple references. It does beg the question how Shadow ended up at a bowling tournament though, but I guess we'll find out. And speaking of the extraterrestrial that is red, it's time for the final battle. This time it's with the buyer. He finally gets to show up and actually do something. My brother thinks they're overusing mech suits, and I didn't have a problem with it. I can see why it would be smart, it's much harder to get hit by Knuckles when you're inside this big walking tin can. There's a bit of a loss of impact though, and I would admire the courage to face up to Knuckles directly, but I guess that is pretty impossible, except with those gloves that the agents were using. And I know that we needed to do an upgrade from that for the final battle because we've already seen those a bunch of times. So technically it's fine. Knuckles is having a hard time right away though because this mech has tentacles that can drain Knuckles' energy, and they wrap themselves around Knuckles and just really suck the life out of him. When Wade sees this, he proves that he is much braver than the buyer by standing up to him directly without any weapons. This is lovely, but of course he would have totally died if his mom and sister hadn't drove by and given him the... what do you call those? Those gloves the agents were using, the gauntlets powered by Knuckles' quills. And Wade actually uses these to chuck several bowling balls at the mech, which actually does dent it. This is where the scene certainly pays homage to the first Sonic movie. While Knuckles is unconscious, Wade starts hyping him up with a speech. The difference here being that Knuckles isn't necessarily presumed dead. But this speech is actually really emotional because Wade tells him that he's been the best friend he's ever had and that he's fought for his friends, fought to protect his family. But now he's not just fighting to protect both of those things, he's fighting because now he has a home. He's saying that Knuckles has a home. And when he says that, we see that picture of Knuckles and the Whipple family around the Shabbat candles. This is really touching, but it actually makes me wonder if this means that Knuckles is a part of the Whipple family now and not the Wachowski family. So I don't know if this means he's gonna go back and live with them, or just go back and live with Wade, or maybe he will still go back and live with Sonic and Tails and Maddie and Tom. But either way, there's no denying that Knuckles has made some very strong connection with Wade's family. Now, for the first time, he has something that he can call a home for himself. Maybe he should live with the Whipples or with Wade because he didn't feel at home with the Wachowskis. But maybe that's a conversation for another day. Anyways, Knuckles is able to wake from his slumber and KOs the villain with the flames of disaster, baby. Now, because of that backstory with Iblis, it does seem like Knuckles has had this ability for quite some time, so I'm not sure why he didn't pull it out in Sonic 2, or maybe he doesn't usually use it, but anyways, he uses it here and he does this awesome spiral fastball thing. It's really great. And just to be safe, they also take the top off the building and drop it on his head, so the bad guy's probably dead. Back at the tournament, Pistol Pete is trying to escape the rubble with the trophy because he's that petty. Fortunately, Wade's mom comes just in time to knock him out, so all is well, and we end the series with Wade and Knuckles just about to do a high five, and you know that Wade is gonna die. Sorry, pal. So now that I've pretty much covered the entire series, how do I feel about it overall? I think this series is pretty hard to sum up. I definitely enjoyed it. The overall tone of the series was definitely unexpected, but I actually liked it. I appreciated that it wasn't necessarily trying to be the Sonic movies. It was definitely more its own thing, and it was also unapologetic about that. If you're gonna do something, you might as well commit to it, so I'm here for that. I don't think it's as good as the Sonic movies personally, but it has moments that are just as good. I like the emotional bits a lot. I like the genuine connection Knuckles builds with Wade's family, and the growth that Wade gets. I think the most growth that Knuckles gets is developing this connection, but I wish we saw a bit more of what went on in Knuckles' head. I think we see a lot of what goes on in Wade's head. I guess what I'm saying is Knuckles doesn't really develop personally, or wait, no, he does. I just want to see it through his perspective a little bit more than we did. But there is still definitely a payoff, even if the payoff isn't as much as I wanted it to be. It's definitely still there, so that's good. I wish some of the characters were a lot funnier, like some of the bad guys. Like, I think Pistol Pete could have been a lot funnier instead of just like, ew, you suck. I think Wanda could have been written out entirely. Villains could have been written better, and they could have been utilized a lot more. Otherwise, yeah, this is a solid show. I was kind of hoping we would get introduced to a new character, like a new Sonic character, or that we would at least connect with Sonic and Tom again at the end, like even over the phone. But we don't, and I guess that's okay. I still enjoyed what this show had to offer. I loved getting to see more Knuckles and Wade, and I'm still really looking forward to Sonic 3.